Hello, I'm Joanna Abijouti, FIDM Museum Associate. Welcome to our conversation with Bridgerton costume designer Ellen Mirojnick. We'll take audience questions at the end of the evening, so be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed guests and moderators. Kevin Jones is the curator of the FIDM Museum, overseeing a 15,000-piece historic fashion collection. A graduate of FIDM, Kevin was at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art before joining the FIDM Museum. He curates exhibitions on diverse topics from Hollywood to high fashion, including co-curating the Richard Martin award-winning exhibition, catalog, and documentary, High Style, Betsy Bloomingdale and the Haute Couture. The upcoming exhibition, Sporting Fashion, Outdoor Girls 1800 to 1960, is scheduled to open at the Frick Pittsburgh in July 2021 before touring across several United States museums. The accompanying catalog is available for pre-order through Amazon.com. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you, Joanna.
Nick Verreos is co-chair of FIDM's Fashion, Theater Costume, and Film and Television Costume Design programs. He is a graduate of the college. Nick is also co-designer of the Los Angeles brand Nicolaki, which has been worn by celebrities such as Katy Perry, Carrie Underwood, Heidi Klum, and Beyonce. In addition, he is the consulting producer of Bravo's Project Runway, an author of fashion, pattern making, and sketching books, and the face of popular YouTube channel Fashion School with Nick Verreos. Nick, welcome. Ellen Mirojnick is an award-winning costume designer with an impressive career in both film and television that has spanned 3 decades. Born and raised in New York City, she initially worked as a successful fashion designer. As a preeminent Hollywood costume designer, her passion for contemporary design has had an impact on motion picture style. Ellen's costumes have been featured many times in the FIDM Museum's Art of Motion Picture Costume Design and Art of Television Costume Design exhibitions. She has been nominated twice for BAFTA and Emmy Awards, winning the Emmy for Behind the Candelabra. She is known for her accomplished work on films such as The Greatest Showman, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, Wall Street, Basic Instinct, and Let Them All Talk. The list of prominent filmmakers Mirojnick has designed for is extensive, and this includes Steven Soderbergh, Steven Spielberg, Oliver Stone, Paul Verhoeven, Tony and Ridley Scott, Catherine Bigelow, J.J. Abrams, and Angelina Jolie, to name a few. And now she is the costume designer of the most watched show on Netflix. Please join me in welcoming Bridgerton costume designer Ellen Mirojnick.
Hi, Joanna.
We are so excited to have you. And Kevin, would you like to kick us off with the first question?
Sure, thank you, Joanna. And welcome, Ellen. We're so glad. We've been looking forward to having you with us today to talk all things Bridgerton. This is such an incredible project, and we can't wait to hear all the details behind the scenes about some of the characters. Bridgerton, created by Julia Quinn, set in 1813, Regency, England. How in the world did you approach a project of such proportions? And just to tell our viewers, there are more than 6,000 costumes that were created by 230 of your staff members. And how do you build something from the ground up and convince your directors, the producers, get your actors behind you and your vision of this very kind of heightened fictional style?
Oh, well, very, very good to be with you, Kevin, today. I'm so happy to participate in this panel. And I'll bring you as many Bridgerton notes as I possibly can. The size of the show is enormous. And the first and foremost thing that one has to do is create a vision for what the whole entire world needs to be. What I did with my co-captain, John Glazer, is create an extensive lookbook. And with this lookbook, it felt very, very much exactly what our research brought to us and where we wanted to go with creating the vision for the show. And what it included was the color palette. It included everything from modern clothes through period clothes. What you might see in front of you, this is the lookbook parts of the lookbook that we created. And so there isn't anything that's identifiable for a particular character, but it is most important to bring across the feel of what we wanted and what was most important for me to convey for this in creating this world. I'd worked with Shondaland before. I knew that it needed to have an aspirational feel. I also knew that it needed to have modern twists to it, and that Chris Van Dusen, who created the show, was not interested in a bonnet world. It needed to be a bonnetless world. What we were tasked was adapting what Julia Quinn and Chris Van Dusen created. And it is an adaptation. It is fiction. It is a heightened reality. It's fantasy, romance, and sexiness. And everybody, once doing this book, everybody was on the same page. Everybody was on the same page, from every single executive to every single department member, and also makeup and hair, of course, which is so important to the show as well. You show the book, you show it to the actors, you show it to the producers, you show it to the directors, hair and makeup, and everybody is set. This is the Bible.
And did you have any troubles with any of your vision convincing all of the various power players, or was everybody with you right from the get-go?
Everybody was with me right from the get-go. They had entrusted me with creating a world that would be magical. It was a big assignment and it was a big responsibility, but funny enough, I loved it so much. I didn't for 1 second think that it was too much. I don't know why, call me crazy, but I never thought anything but this could be just a luscious challenge. And then of course it comes down to, how does it get done? And
Right.
That's another thing.
And how did you at the beginning balance the historical accuracy that you pulled together all that information with, you know, this fantasy world and bringing it into a today reality, but set in a ballroom? You know, was there a certain percentage you were going after, or?
No. You know what it basically was like? It's like creating a magnificent meal. And so it comes with your eye. It comes with a feel for the balance. It comes with, there's no exact science to it, not anything at all. It is just, it's a way in which the colors and the fabric and the feel balance each other out. If it looked too serious, how do I make it a little bit more fanciful? If it looked too fanciful, what does it need to balance? It's like a fanciful feast, and just having everything that you ever wanted be able to go into this huge potpourri of costumes.
It looks like a lot of calories at that feast.
It was very, very rich. It was very rich. And if it wasn't rich enough, we managed to add a lot of spice to make it richer. Yes. There was never a question. I know it sounds, I don't mean to sound, kind of diva-like, but there was never a question of it being right or wrong. We just, once we knew where we were going, we went straight ahead and didn't look back once.
Well, I love that the Bridgertons have been described as kind of powdery in their appearance. The Featheringtons as audacious. That's a word I've heard you use.
Yes.
And the Duke is very jewel tone. I mean, it's very regal. A question about, were the costumes heavy? Because, there are layers, especially Queen Charlotte, I mean, those wigs, I mean.
That was heavy. Those were heavy. The wigs were heavy. No, the fabrics that we chose in moving this piece to have a modern layer to it. The fabrics were very modern. That's where the first level of modernness came from. Actually, the first was shifting the palette. The second was choosing fabrics that were modern so that we were able to layer color upon color and not have it feel like a drapery was wrapped around your shoulders. We chose colors that could be layered to have fluidity and shift to another tone when they moved. We chose organdy and organza, not chiffon, that was too limp and didn't have enough body to be able to layer on top of silks, to change colors, to make them more interesting, to give them more depth. But nothing inclusive of the men's velvet jackets were heavy. They were all very wearable garments. And I think that with that in mind, when the actors came in to be fit, and you could watch how the actors moved in the clothes, if it looked too heavy, if it wasn't something that looked like it was part of them, it was changed immediately. So yes, Queen Charlotte, she did have a task to her, and she had quite a tall head, and it was so much fun not having continuity with her, because that actor was up for it all. She was there 150%. So whatever wig was designed to work with whichever gown, with colors and where she was in the story, she was all in 150%. And yes, it was almost like a double corset under her costumes, and it was a bit difficult, but she wore them with great pride.
Nick has some questions for you, but I want to ask just one more before.
Okay.
The man hours, the woman hours, all hours. What was an average for your day? Did you have 24 hours a day, or was everything very planned out beforehand, knowing that you were not going to be shooting the series in a chronological order, which had to be difficult in your planning.
Certainly.
But with the man and woman hours involved, can you talk a little bit about that? What your days were like?
I would say that they were not exceptionally brutal. They were not brutal at all. They were they were kind of regular hours. I'm sorry to say, I think we were very organized, thankfully to great costume supervisors who logistically laid everything out for us. So we knew what, where, how, and when we needed to proceed with each one of the characters, each one of the garments, each one with where do we have to send this, what do we need, and so on. I had the most remarkable all-star team anyone, anywhere could ever ask for. Every single member of my team was so perfect in every single way that everything was so synchronistic and worked like clockwork. And it's really important to trust and have that type of relationship and have that type of talent surrounding you, because clearly you can't be everything to everyone at all times.
Right. That goes to saying, working with professionals and being a professional and knowing that you can rely on people and they can rely on you.
Yes.
So with that, I want to hand the microphone over to Nick, because I know he's got a slew of questions for you.
Okay, Nick, let's go.
Hi, Ellen. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. I know we have people tuning in from all over the world. I saw Brazil, Philippines. I think I'm speaking for many of them. I'm fanboying. I don't even know if that's a term, but I've been such a big fan of yours, and it's such an honor to have you with us. Ever since I think the first time we met in 2013 during your candelabra, behind the candelabra.
Mhm.
I remember doing some research, and all of a sudden I saw Basic Instinct, Fatal
Mhm.
Attraction, Wall Street. Oh no, this woman is going into gay heaven. And from that moment, I absolutely respected, adored you. I mean, it was beyond, beyond. Anyway, so
Well,
let's
thank
get
you.
to the fashions. I know, you did such an outstanding job of the gorgeous interpretation of the Regency era with the costumes in Bridgerton. I mean, like you said, it was such a feast. But what was wonderful about it, it was like you were full, but you wanted more. It was like,
Mhm.
wait, I want more of that. I want more of that. And my husband and I, every week, we just kept going because we wanted to see more and more and more. And that's a testament to your visual haute couture. So, I know that you used the Regency era as a starting point, and then you did some contemporary upgrades. I read that you did research the 20th century, obviously the 19th century, but in particular, you were interested in the 1960s. Talk a little bit what about the 60s or the silhouette that inspired you or influenced you a little bit into the Bridgerton costumes?
Well, the 60s, I mean, the 60s were a natural to look at in terms of a silhouette, simply because of the Empire line. And that was, we looked at it carefully and looked at the silhouette and how the Empire line was constructed. And we knew we had to do something different, because in the 60s, it was more cylindrical and even around. And what we wanted to do was create, because there's so much movement in the show, we wanted to create a fluidity to the back of the dress. We needed to have a seam that rose in the back and fell in the front to cup the bosom, and be able to also layer another fabric on top of the base foundation, so that there was fluidity in our garments, which were different than the 60s. But I always look at modern, I can't help myself. I do such a deep dive in the research and love to look at fashion so much that, you always learn something from something else, and your eye picks up thoughts, and certain thoughts can lead to other thoughts, and so on and so forth. And I know that you had asked me earlier about Chanel and
Yes,
what
right, about the Chanel. I think I also read, we talked about how you were inspired by some of the recent, actually, haute couture collections.
Yes.
Was it the rich embroideries, the appliques, that because after watching the show and then reading that and talking to you about that, about how you were inspired by Chanel and some of the recent haute couture collections, I was like, yep, I see it now. I see the 3D layering,
That's
the
right.
texture.
That's exactly right. Is that it was the spring summer Chanel 2019 haute couture collection.
Mhm.
And in that there was a combination of fine and delicate and a bold color statement of a firm fabric. So it was fine and delicate versus firm. And I like both elements. And what I liked so much was that they made their fabrics out of these beautiful flower shapes.
Mhm.
And they were very fine and delicate, and they mirrored that with a beautiful silk and turned back and made it a bit sculptural. Well, we weren't necessarily going for the sculptural aspect, but I liked the idea of mixing the fabrics and creating fabric, because there is not enough fabric in the entire world to do this show about creating fabrics, and not only embellishments, but creating fabric with the idea of layering flowers and appliques onto simple fabrics to get an end result.
Ellen, where did you have the embroideries done?
In-house. In-house. The embroideries were done by, I mean, the team of cutters and embellishers and embroiderers. There's they sit there and do hand embroidery, or they do stoning, or they do lay flowers, or they combine fabrics. Everyone has such a special skill, but everyone actually, in all honesty, is multi-talented. They can actually work through many different disciplines, which is so, I mean, I wish we had it in the United, had that type of artisan craftsmanship in the United States, and unfortunately we don't.
So all of it was done in Britain.
All of it was done in Britain. All of it.
Look at that, the layering, the texture. Now, I also want to discuss the jewelry, because some of that jewelry, at least in my eyes, it looked so modern, but yet at the same time, it again, a testament to you and your team. It felt so seamless as part of the costume and the wardrobe of these families, of these people, So talk a little bit about the jewelry.
Well, the jewelry, I mean, how could you go to a ball, or how could you have wealthy people without jewelry? The jewelry was the biggest task in this entire show. I would say that gathering the jewelry was probably the hardest task of the whole entire show. Each character had their own, I would say, their own identifying way of appearing. And Daphne, for example, was very delicate. She hardly wore any accessories. And when she did, they were very small. Versus, let's say, Portia Featherington, who wore the kitchen sink. And it looked fabulous because of who she was, And so each thing was done very, very specifically for each character, although the collection of jewelry that we had to have was enormous. And so we gathered it from Italy, we gathered it from Spain, the UK, from actually the United States as well. We had the most talented jeweler, artisan, costume. I mean, Lorenzo is the best. I don't even know. I can't put a category on Lorenzo, but he makes magnificent jewelry, and he makes magnificent jewelry of all kinds. And he can copy whatever it is that you want to create. And so he did. He and all of his team that worked for us. The jewelry was really meant to be, how should I put it? The period at the end of the sentence of who the character was. And in some cases, like the Featheringtons and like Chanel, who would say, you take one thing off before you leave the house. The Featheringtons put one thing on before they left the house. And they left the house.
Or 2 or 3 or 4.
Or heavy is best, whichever it might be.
More like exclamation mark.
Yes. I mean, it's quite remarkable when you think it could be too much, and it really isn't. But look at it all together. But then again, on the other hand, the Bridgerton family is so fine and elegant and more sophisticated that just little touches were all that was needed. So, and then we had so much of a variety of different types of characters, and we see the ton in so many different circumstances, whether it's the garden party or a picnic or a ball or on the square or at the modiste. We had so many opportunities to use accessories that it was so much fun for myself, my team, and especially the assistant designers and the fitters to just create work as they were fitting each one of the background artists. And each one of the background artists has that much attention paid to them in this show. Each costume that is put on a background artist is as bespoke as the principal costumes are.
Wow. And we see the colors there in the Featheringtons. You see the purples, the lavenders. So I know that you do such a beautiful job of giving each family sort of a color code, per se. So talk a little bit about, how did you choose the soft blues, pastels of the Bridgertons the more, shall we say, possibly elegant, subdued colors for them, and then the brighter, more I want you to see me colors of the Featheringtons. How did that come about?
Well, I must say that it was a given in the Bridgerton series. It was a given when written in Julia Quinn's writing. The Featheringtons were always audacious, and I mean, I think that it is described in the book. I could be mistaken, so please, anybody listening who knows this, I don't know this for fact, but I believe it so, is that Penelope is supposed to be, or is written to be, in an ugly yellow dress. Well, I didn't ever think yellow was ugly, so I took that out of my vocabulary. But but what Chris did right was that she is in yellow, and that color range that the family has is a little acidic. It's a little off. And the Bridgertons, I actually was very, very informed by French macaroons, and also, you know, how they just display those boxes. They're so pretty. The colors are so pretty. And then all of the ceilings and the patisserie of white little, you know, kind of scrolling on beautiful pastries and cakes, and it looks so refined, is I think the best word that I could use, as opposed to luscious fruits and different kinds of richer, brighter, more vibrant colors for the
the Featheringtons almost looked exotic in that stage. Now, you brought up the yellow. I'm fascinated by this, by Penelope and the yellow, and you brought it up and talking about how possibly in the book it says, you know, she wore ugly yellow.
I think so, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but it was somewhat translated like that to me.
I read that in the Regency era, and maybe I'm mistaken, that yellow was considered basically like for if you were part of the high fashion, you know, the fashionistas of that time, they wore that color. And
there you go.
and also, which this is the part that I love, that yellow also was signified deceit. And I don't want to give too much away if some of the attendees haven't finished the series, but Penelope, yellow, you know, fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank after you see it, and then
and come back to us.
Then come back. Yes, we are always here to answer any questions. But you know,
Ellen,
I think
I have a question about with the colors, but also with the silhouettes of characters, because we're talking Regency. You know, we've got the kind of that empire waistline, you know, short torso, long legs, and so forth. But what about like Portia Featherington's silhouette, but even more so the Queen Charlotte's silhouette? I mean, that's really 18th century versus Regency. Why did you make choices in different silhouettes for different characters at times?
Well, let's start with the Queen. That's pretty simple. The Queen Charlotte, was known as fact to not change her silhouette from the 18th century silhouette once she was crowned. Once she married King George and took the throne, she never changed her silhouette. All through the 19th century, she just never changed. So it was, I think, not only a fun choice to make, but a real choice. Her hair, on the other hand, was part of our fantasy, but it serves our Queen Charlotte, I think, characteristically, and really filling out who she really is. On the other hand, with Portia was created, the silhouette that we created for Portia was done out of a necessity. And that was that she still has the Regency line when you look closely to her garments. She still has she still has a higher waistline. It dips in the back. the proportion is a little bit different. And we did not just drop the silhouette, drop the skirt from the line. We gave her a shape. And it was for her character and for Polly Walker, the actress, because there was a certain, well, you're not quite certain if it's 1813, 1810, 1813, maybe the 50s, maybe a bit of movie star Elizabeth Taylor, like kind of that kind of in your face a little bit, and a little bit of just I would say a movie star approach to her glamour, I say that is like really the heading into the design of Portia was movie star glamour.
I think that goes along with Nick's observation about the use of the 1960s. And you think of the glamour Hollywood that was going on at that time.
Yes, all of it plays into it. All of that equals modern twists or modern layers that are part of creating this fantasy world, this fantasy adaptation of the Regency period. We never, ever, ever started out to make a perfect period piece. I thought, actually, before seeing it, I thought, oh, there's going to be a lot of people that are really going to rack me over the coals because it is not period correct.
You could just hear those people, right? You could hear those people like, that's, those
sharpening the blades.
She made bad mistakes.
Right, film masters, educators, that is not period correct.
That's what I think that I could have been accused of that straight down the line. But, I do have to say this, is that when each and every actor came into the room to be fit for the first time, and we took them through on the journey of what we hoped the show to become their characters and such, what they saw was something that they had never seen before in a period production of, especially a Regency period production. And every single one, whether they were principal or background artists, were thrilled to be costumed in this type of vibrancy that gave new meaning to the Regency period.
I think building the world from the ground up, the way you've described it, which I think is so perfect. It's not half trying to be historical, half trying not to be historical. You went the whole way. You went to the complete world. You created your own Regency world. And these actors have to live within the sets, whether they're indoors or outdoors. Do you work really closely? Was there synchronicity going on between, acidic colors in one of the sitting rooms? So you have acidic, how did you balance that aspect of doing a movie? Because we've just been talking about the actors and the costumes. There's a whole other world that they're living in.
Well, the world, as I started to say before, I was the first one hired on this show. So we ran, so that lookbook was created, the feeling, the palette, everything was really right before our eyes, coming to life quickly. When Will Hughes was the production designer, was hired, and he loved it, and he took it and he ran with it. So as I mentioned before, everybody was on the same page. So if we knew what was going to, even if we kind of knew what was going to happen in any number of different scenes, everybody was on the same page. Everybody worked to that final frame that would be captured and then brought to life. And Will was so generous with us in terms of working so closely with the colors and the paintings and the colors of the room, and what the colors of the room and the colors of the clothes, that would be really fun to do together.
Right,
And
exactly.
be of one. I mean, you don't normally see that, so that was really fun to take that leap. And I think that Will and his team were very much, once you have that roadmap and you have that guide, well, everything does fall into place. It just falls right into place. And there would be nothing, none of this would be absolutely as wonderful as it has become or what you see if it wasn't for everyone working so closely together. And that was paramount. And it was paramount on each episode, in each scene, of course, in each character, and how it was shot, how it was lit, how everything just comes together, and everybody so happily willing to work together on bringing this to life. And if you had a question, you asked, if you didn't like the color, you asked, and it was just down to the greatest teams ever working on this production. And I might say, as also, and this can't be forgotten at all, the post-production people on this show were so amazing, because you think about that whole entire show, how much color is in it, whether it's on the walls or on people, and it all has to be color timed. And everything has to be brought to its best vibrancy. And so they are just as responsible as we all were in putting it together before the camera in the first place.
Were the interiors, were any of them shot at actual historic historic buildings, or were all of those interiors built on a soundstage?
No, I would say that this was the production that traveled all across England and shot in some of the most famous houses across England, for those very reasons. And then the interiors that were built on a soundstage they happened to be the houses, the Bridgerton house and the Featherington house. And maybe there was one or two other little sets. Possibly the house where the party is, the Bohemian party is. But otherwise, everything else took place on location. It was really a location project that nobody expected to be a location project when we began. So you just have to really have I think you really just have to be fluid in how you decide how to really work things to the best of that they could, the highest level that they could be on each and every person, in each and every scene, in each and every situation, and be willing to change your ideas as an end result. And sometimes, when you go into a fitting and you look at people in clothes and you go, wait, that does not work. It does not work. We thought it would work and it just doesn't. So let's change it. And then you have to be willing to change on a dime. And
are with you in the dressing rooms when you're trying on pieces with the actors. What's the dialogue? Is it, do the actors have a lot to say with what they think their character is all about, how they would dress, how they would be able to move? What is that dialogue? What is that working like?
Well, we have a couple of people, depending on who the actor is and what the necessities of getting them into clothes and out would be. It would normally be at least 3 people in a fitting. Myself, sometimes John Glazer, sometimes an assistant, always someone with women, always someone to them in a corset in their undergarments. That's what actors complain about the most is the corset. Even the smallest of corsets, they complain about it. We had the great fortune of having Mr. Pearl, who is like the finest corset maker in the world, on our costume team. On our costume team, he came to work just as all of us every single day as a member of our costume team. So he created the silhouette for each and every girl with the corset. Even though the corset was a small corset at that time, the bosom still had to be taken into account, and what shape we needed as right below the empire line, what that needed to be under the dress. So Mr. Pearl sometimes would be in the room, or we'd call him into the room. And of course, we always listen to the actors, always. But there's a way in which you can listen to actors and work with them so that if they're off base, you manage to pull them back onto the plate and actually begin to show them what possibly you could, how wrong you could be or how right you could be, so that they feel as if they're participating, which they're always allowed to participate in my fitting room. But sometimes you really have to do a lot of manipulation and pulling and what have you to get them to feel a particular way. And also, if you're not feeling it, be able to keep them focused so that you can try everything that you need to try to get to the right solution.
Well, I can't believe this hour is going by so fast. And
Has it gone by so fast already?
Yeah. And we could talk about Bridgerton for hours and hours and hours, because there's so much to talk about. But I want to step back one bit and ask you, Ellen.
Yes.
How do you pass on all of this experience, this rich world that you work in, that you live in, that you create in? How do you pass this on to the next generation? Because you are a mentor. You're a mentor right now for all of the people watching from around the world, and you're a mentor to the people you work with directly day to day. How do you deal that?
I love to share. I really do love to share. I love to be there for someone. I like to very, very much. There's no secret that I have. There is no secret that I keep, if you will. I like, if there is something that I can pass on, it is learn how to communicate. I really try to really express this simple element of communication is the first and foremost thing that I really try to let others know how important it is, because we work in collaboration, and working in collaboration, you have so many people around you all the time. I think that you have to be strong in your belief and strong in your vision, but you must learn how to communicate. Most importantly, learn how to listen. So learn how to listen to what is expected, learn how to listen to other people's vision, learn to listen to others, how they express, actors, how they express their needs, a production designer, how he or she might want to go in a different direction. You have to communicate why you feel a different thought. So I would like to share. I love to answer questions. I love to help as much as I can. There is no question that's stupid. All questions are just as important, so that most importantly, I hope for the next generation to have a confidence, a truth, and an authenticity to who they are and what they contribute in terms of design and whatever else they need to contribute to our culture, because it's the only thing that will make it richer.
I just want to personally say thank you, Ellen, because your generosity is literally leaping out from the screen. I mean, it is so great of you to join us tonight and so forth, but also just to have the positivity that you have, because it is infectious, and I know that it adds to a fantastic working environment. And if you have a fantastic working environment, that means you have a very creative, open working environment.
Agree, because I delegate quite a lot. Okay, and when I delegate quite a lot, it is with the hope that everyone understands the vision, everyone brings their best to the table, everyone tells the truth, asks the questions when they don't, no one gets banned, and everybody has a great time. And it's not about he said, she said. It's really about walking in beauty. And that is my point of view from it. It always has been. And I think till the day I die, it'll be about walking in truth and in beauty.
Ellen, I'm afraid I'm going to be stealing that and using that, walking in beauty. I think that's wonderful.
Please be my guest.
And it's perfect segue to opening up to a Q&A time period with our viewers from around the world. So
great.
Questions, start typing real fast. I'm going to open it up with Crystal Rose, who asked, did Audrey Hepburn in War and Peace inspire you for Daphne's bridal and art of the swoon looks?
Actually, no, I'm afraid to say, because I don't remember that film. And I love Audrey Hepburn. And Audrey Hepburn was, funny enough, a great model for Daphne. I mean, she was the model, if you have to say, whether it's her hair, whether it's her brows, her little curls, the way she walked or the way she held herself. My Fair Lady, Audrey Hepburn at the end. I mean, that's a really good call, but I don't remember War and Peace, so I can't really, I don't really know that film. But yes, Audrey Hepburn was the inspiration for Daphne.
Well, I'll ask a question from Brianna Thompson for Ellen. Brianna wants to know, whose wardrobe was your favorite to design? Which one could you you couldn't go to sleep the night before because I can't wait to start that one?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. It depends on which day of the week it was and what I was up to. Listen, I loved the Featheringtons a lot. I really, really loved the Featheringtons, but I love the Bridgertons also. So, I mean, I don't know that I can answer one person. There isn't a person. And I know that sounds really silly, but I really don't. But the Featheringtons were great fun. I have to say that.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Nick, do you have another one?
Yes, I want to talk. Somebody wants to know about the hidden butterflies and bees.
Oh yes.
If they were in the book, or if that was an Ellen Mirojnick, placement. Talk about that, and how many of there were there?
Lots. But I don't remember. Honest to goodness, I don't. This is the picture that you see in front of you is of Caroline or Sarah embroidering the butterfly, which becomes the butterfly that is the bodice of Penelope's first ball gown. The mark of the Bridgertons were bees, and the signature of the Featheringtons were butterflies. And so you find bees on waistcoats and on different types of little accents of stick pins and different patterns in the Bridgerton household. You find butterflies, and lots of them, always on Penelope. She wears butterfly jewelry. She wears butterflies in her hair. She has butterflies on her dress. She wears butterflies everywhere you could possibly imagine we could put one, even as an accessory at the top of her waist.
And the meaning for that?
It's the signature of the house.
Got
It's
it.
the signature of the house.
Right.
And the bees are the signature of the Bridgertons.
That's great. So I have a question from Michael Costa, Michelle Costa. I understand that a lot of the fabric was hand embroidered, but was there a lot of it also hand painted or printed?
No is the answer to that. It wasn't, we didn't use a lot of painting at all. Sometimes when the fabric is painted in a particular way, and for the whole look of our show, it would present itself to have a little bit of a different quality, and that wasn't what we were after. And unfortunately, we did not have a lot of time to experiment at all with other techniques in terms of painting and dye. A lot of things were dyed, but not painted, or there were some effects that we created through textile art of dyeing, but not of painting, because there was a lack of time to really make it be, terrific. So we embroidered, we overlayered, we appliqued, we did things too, and didn't create fabric through painting.
Wonderful. I have a question, Ellen. And this is something that could go for costume design students as well as fashion design students, because it is such a daunting task. Like, the question is, how do you even begin? But for me, I would ask you, how do you organize your inspiration? Like that amazing lookbook of yours that makes it, for you, it ties it all together. It makes it cohesive and helpful to you. Like, how do you make it so cohesive and helpful, your inspiration?
It's an artistic endeavor. It's an artistic endeavor. It really is. I can't explain it any other way. It's like painting a painting. When I was a young child, for many, many years into my teens and my young adulthood, I painted quite a bit. And so when I look at something, I look at the bigger picture of it. I don't look at just, oh, there is a costume in that corner. No, I create something in terms of the bigger picture and then go into the costume, if that makes sense to you. But I look at it as a large canvas. And so that I organize it. And I mean, working with John Glazer, his eye and my eye, I mean, we're two eyes that see the same. And so it's really helpful in working with someone who has the same vision as you do. You might like something more than he does, and you might switch and change and so on. However, the whole overall idea of the book and what you see has to be that of beauty. Even if this was the ugliest show in the world, this would have to be beautiful ugliness. It would have to be beautiful ugliness for us to be happy with it. But I look at it in terms of I organize it in terms of the largeness of the canvas. This whole section is the entire palette that we worked from for the show, and what stood out and what we liked. Not everything was used, but it gave you a feeling. I work very, 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 very deeply from feelings, Nick. There's nothing that, listen, I'm not going to say, I'll say this on this show, but I was thrown out of fashion school. I was thrown out. I went to Parsons School of Design.
That's a badge of honor. You could use that as a badge of honor, Ellen. Yes.
Thank you. I was thrown out of every, I went to visual arts. I was thrown out of visual arts. I went to Parsons School of Design. They threw me out because I couldn't sew and drape, but I could design. And I always went to art school. So that's how, if that makes sense to you, and how I organize my vision.
I can see
first.
that. Yeah, I can see that with the inspiration mood board. A lot of times, depending on the generations, but this generation is so stuck on this that they think they only know how to get the inspiration from that. And I think your art background does sort of allow you a wider world of where to get inspiration. Just recently, I have a subscription to National Geographic, of all things, but I literally opened it up and there were photos of these exotic rare mushrooms, and the colors were out of this world. And I literally just ripped the magazine pages, and I saw a huge blouson sleeve from
Exactly.
those, and
Exactly.
try to teach that to the youngums.
Well, to the youngums or to everyone, I think that it's really important to keep on seeing and looking and feeling, because there's no right or wrong.
Right.
There's no right or wrong. If you look and you feel and it moves you in some way, you just can't look at Pinterest. You just can't look at that. You have to really open your horizons to every single place. And what's available to us now is so much to be able to look for sources of inspiration, in whether they be for real in nature or manufactured in some hyper tech something or other, or who knows what. But you walk down the street and you can find inspiration. So it doesn't only have to come in the phone, although certain things are helpful to find. that I will say.
We're almost out of time, and I have one more question before we have to wrap things up. And this is coming from one of our viewers, and they're desperate to have an answer. So I'm going to read this out. It's: what inspirations, era references, and design decisions went into the creation of Simon the Duke of Hastings' diamond and emerald brooch that he always wears that belonged to his mother? And what do you hope the piece tells us about her character and personal history?
Now that is a question, isn't it? Well, I would say the answer to that is when in the fitting, when we first met Reggae, we talked about his character at great length, and we talked about who he was, where he came from, what his life was like, what Byron type of references were we going to use to best draw him out, what shapes. But I must say that Reggae, as soon as he walked into the fitting, it was very clear what we could put on him and what wouldn't work on him. He was independent. He was not of the ton. He rejected it as a matter of fact, and he traveled. And yet it was of a particular period of time. And of course, he was the leading man. So all of that goes into the thought process, and the research for him was really basically the same as all the male research. However, to define him, we didn't do specific research. We tried on specific pieces of clothing. To get to the mother brooch, it was something that we thought he would carry with him on his travels, through all of his travels, knowing what his story was. And we had to find what it would be. And truthfully, I think that we found something, and we took it and made it into what we thought would be a beautiful brooch, that it would have been his mother's. What it told us about his mother's character was that she had a fine sense of history and a quality that was rich. That there was a richness to that quality that it had some depth to it. And it didn't help, and she was married to a very wealthy man. She was, but that's the best I could do at this. I really, because it was a found object, truthfully.
Well, on that note, I think we can all agree to end on the Duke of Hastings, right? So
Yes.
thank you
Yes.
so much. Kevin and Nick, thank you for leading an
Thank you
amazing
so much.
discussion. To all of our audience members, thank you for participating, for the Q&A, and of course, most of all, thank you, Ellen, for being with us and giving us your insights on this beautiful production and sharing your lookbook. What an honor to see all of the inspiration behind this really amazing show. So I just wanted to give a quick announcement of the FIDM and FIDM Museum events that we have coming up. The next episode of FIDM Museum's Collection Conversation series will be with Patrick Kelly biographer, Dr. Eric Pritchard. That's this Friday, February 12th at 11 a.m. And we have the FIDM Beauty Innovation Challenge Workshop. That's February 25th at 5 p.m. And of course, please join us for the FIDM Spring Virtual Open House, Saturday, March 20th at 10 a.m. RSVP links and more details are being placed in the chat right now. And we invite all of you to follow us on social media at the handles you see on our screen, including Ellen's. Once again, thank you to our moderators. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you to everybody watching. We just had such a blast.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Ellen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys. I love being here with you.
We love you. We